Well, I've finally done it. I've finally finished reading the novelization of the 2004 Resident Evil film Apocalypse. A whole 277 pages of trash based off of Paul W.S. Anderson's screenplay, adapted again by Keith RA Dicandido. No idea how he got hired again. I think the studio accidentally locked him into a 3-book deal or something, because I can't imagine them asking him to return, especially if Apocalypse really is the first book in the series. After reading this, and Genesis, it feels like the studio, or publisher, asked him to tone it down, but I'm not entirely sure which book came first, and which changes were made for the better. Genesis is so boring despite being filled with gratuitous sex, while Apocalypse is incredibly racist and unnecessarily filled with hard R-N words. And Keith doesn't pass up an opportunity to drop the N-bomb. It's so excessive, Mr.T-Virus and I had to cancel our audiobook reading we were working on. Sorry patrons, I can't afford to get canceled this early. And speaking of patrons, I'd like to give a shout out to my favorite patrons. Thank you guys for supporting the channel and paying the editing bills. Thank you Kyle, Kiera, Marco, Brian, E13, Mark, Julia, and Experiments. And I know Marco has been waiting patiently for this episode, so here's a special shout out directly from the author himself, to Marco, for more reasons than I'm willing to admit in public.
Damn, Marco really gets around.
Yeah, and I'm not sure I'd actually want this book dedicated to me. Let's dedicate this one to Marco. Thanks again for the support. And if anyone else out there would like to help out, please click that subscribe button, share the video, and check out the links in the description below. I post Resident Evil and survival horror content as much as I can, and for this video series, Mr.T-Virus and I will be covering the film novelizations of the ridiculous Alice saga, comparing the differences from the pages to the screen. I'm looking to see how these authors attempt to correct Anderson's baffling, nonsensical character motivations, plot holes, and continuity errors. I want to know what compelled Alice to kamikaze a motorcycle headfirst into a church, or how Keith's gonna explain away these graveyard zombies. How did Alice get on this rooftop?
Whoa, how did I get here? How is it possible for this little girl to beat up this big guy?
All questions I'm sure Keith won't even bother answering, but most importantly, I want to know why characters just up and disappear from the series.
And I'd like to know why Jill Valentine is dressed like a hoe. And what was LJ arrested for?
Let's find out in this episode of Our Review, Resident Evil Apocalypse. Okay, the book opens up by reintroducing us to Major Kane, with a cheap, word-for-word, cut-and-paste chapter straight up recycled from the previous book.
This is a clip from the first movie.
The book really begins where the last one left off. Major Kane arrives on scene with his B-team to reopen the hive. A whole 3 hours after, his A-team was wiped out. Somehow, he didn't learn a single thing from his previous mistake. On the surface, Matt and Alice are taken away by helicopter to be put in the Nemesis program. Both of them. Yeah, in this book, there is no Project Alice. Dr. Isaacs and Major Kane are pretty much rivals, though Kane is in command. They're both looking to develop the next evolution of Super Soldier. But like, what the fuck does Kane know about viruses and genetic manipulation?
You're not mutation. You're evolution.
I rest my case. So, Kane's B-team gets wiped out embarrassingly fast, which was kinda nice. It spared us from having to get to know these characters and all their sex-filled backstories. Everyone was just killed by zombies, all except for Shannon. In the panic, Shannon was accidentally shot to death by Heddle, and the second this went down, Kane just quick turned out of there and flew off, leaving the blast doors wide open, which puts the events of the film's timeline into question. The infection rate doesn't make any sense. We know for a fact that Kane immediately reopened the hive because he hasn't interrogated Alice at the base yet, which should have been the first thing he did. You know, after seeing Matt was infected by a licker. For all he knows, the licker could still be on the loose down in the hive. But this re-entry into the hive couldn't be any later than a month, because that's when Alice wakes up in the hospital. And my point is, the infection couldn't have spread in a single day. Umbrella would need time to construct this giant-ass quarantine wall around the city. So, what exactly happened here? There's a 4-week gap from the opening of the hive to Alice waking up. And I don't care how long the zombies had, there's no way or reason they'd navigate their way, all 492 of them, up the train tracks, to the surface, in the dark. The Red Queen's been fried. She wasn't sending up trains of zombies. And one more discrepancy. Paul has said numerous times that this first film is a prequel to the events of the first game.
The first film was very much intended as a prequel to the video games.
But the T-Virus was moved to the Hive after a leak in the Arklay Mountains, setting the events of the first game before Paul's prequel. With that setup out of the way, we're introduced to every character one at a time, followed by some painfully awful exposition dumps. Every one of these conversations gradually gets more and more obnoxious, and they all adhere to some cookie-cutter format Keith has lazily devised to write dialogue between two characters, to give us the information we don't really need to know. The Raccoon 7 news crew, some random kids in a car on Ravensgate Bridge, the Umbrella goons sent to pick up Ashford, the other two goons sent to pick up Angela. Their dialogue all fits into the same exact format and pacing. One character is always annoying the other, testing their patience. The obnoxious one always starts off by asking a question over and over, which turns into an argument so Keith can cram in as many swear words and get us the information we need. In the newsroom, the cameraman starts an argument with the AD, asking, why do they always have to say, in the AM? In the car, it's, why do they call it Ravensgate Bridge? In the other car, why do you always have to crack your gum? And the last car, why do people always say, let's boogie? Each convo turning into an argument, leading me to believe that this was Keith's first book in the series, because I don't recall Genesis being this bad. In the newsroom, we learn that Terry is a pill popper who was demoted to Weather Girl after falsely reporting that Councilman Miller was taking bribes. A story she ran with based off rumor from a local DJ. No evidence, no witness, all hearsay. You can give me wall-crawling lickers, zombies rising from the graves, shit. You can even give me back-flipping superhuman supermodels, and I'll suspend my disbelief. But if you expect me to believe that a reporter was demoted for spreading fake news, now you've just gone into pure fantasy. This scene in the movie actually serves two purposes. One, to report on the freak heat wave taking place in October, giving Jill the excuse to dress like a complete hoe.
How do we get Jill Valentine in her typical miniskirt and tube top? Heat wave in Raccoon City.
This went over Keith's head. Instead, he replaces Jill's skirt with some cargo shorts.
Shorts and knee-high boots. What is she, a child?
Yeah, not even booty shorts.
And she wonders why she was suspended.
The second reason for this scene was to cut to commercial.
Imagine a world where you can reverse the effects of age, stress, and sun.
This ad was later cut from the movie because it was used in the film's ad campaign. Originally, it was supposed to establish that Terry was popping these anti-aging pills and not just getting high at work, but it led nowhere, so Keith just made her a junkie. And on Ravensgate Bridge, the Butt-Rough brothers argue over the origins of the name of the bridge, and not the fact that there's a giant-ass wall being constructed around the bridge. And while this is happening, the Umbrella convoy of SUVs goes flying by. In the car to pick up Dr. Ashford is Mike Friedberger and Peterson. And besides the hilarious visual of Peterson having to forcibly pick up Ashford's crippled ass against his will and place him into the vehicle, this chapter is the absolute worst. It's so bad, in fact, there are multiple negative reviews on this book specifically citing this chapter and these characters. This duo is so cringe, obnoxious, and unlikable, I'd rather play a full-length Resident Evil game based off the adventures of Keith and Quint from Revelations. That's how unbearable they are.
Jackass here! Oh, I hate snow! Snow hates you.
Told from Mike Friedberger's POV, his patience runs thin, while the reader is annoyed by Keith's lack of vocabulary. Every other word in this 5-page paragraph is either fuck or fucking, and I lost count after 30 F-bombs. And I'm willing to bet that this is the only moment out of all of Keith's works where the reader feels anything close to an emotion that the character on the page is feeling. I was right there with Mike Friedberger, getting pissed off every time Peterson opened his damn mouth. I'm pissed just thinking about it. So, they abduct Dr. Ashford, a top-level researcher for Umbrella, the creator of the T-Virus, and I have to wonder, why did they wait until last minute to evacuate all their VIPs? They had all this time to construct a border wall, but they couldn't send an email or make a phone call? Now, the last two exposition goons are just as bad, but they're short-lived. They abduct Angela Ashford from Mr. Strunk's class. With no call from her parents, no letter, this teacher just lets one of his kids get abducted. And Bobby Bernstein, the class clown, makes fun of her crippled father, getting a laugh out of the whole class. I think even Mr. Strunk laughs at her. And as she's on her way out to get sex trafficked, she says out loud to the class, "I hope you die, Bobby Bernstein."
Damn, now I see why they modeled the Red Queen after her.
Yeah, and it gets even better. Angela quickly discovers after the wreck with the garbage truck that zombies aren't interested in her. She lures the zombie garbage truck driver all the way back to her school, getting all her teachers and classmates killed, as she leads a horde of undead towards Bobby Bernstein, and she enjoys every second of it.
Yeah, now this is the movie they should have released.
Nah, I think it causes more problems than it solves. Like, why didn't anyone come to her rescue at the crash site? And why did she go to the one place where Umbrella can't track her, and then she stays there forever, even though she's playing with God mode activated? She can walk around and do anything. I think it's best that the viewer doesn't have this information. But what information I did want, and what we've been waiting for, is why was LJ arrested and cuffed next to this zombie-ass hoe? LJ was arrested for running 3-card Monty in the park.
That's it? Not drugs, robbery, or prostitution?
Yep, that's it. Kinda surprising knowing this book. Everything about LJ is a racial stereotype to the extreme. In this book, he dresses like a pimp. Everyone he associates with is a drug dealer or a crackhead. He drops the N-bomb every chance he can get. He's packing 2 custom Uzis, his car got repoed, he scammed his own mother, and he lost his rent betting on a football game.
GTA, motherfucker! Oh, yeah! 10 points!
And it's not just LJ. Every black character in this book is some form of an overtly racist stereotype. Everyone except for Peyton, which leads me to believe that Keith wrote this book well before anyone was actually cast.
We'd originally planned to cast Snoop in this role, so his character was he was a lot more Snoop. He was a lot more kind of over the top and much bigger.
That explains the pimp shit, but it doesn't excuse why Keith was so eager to say the N-word every chance he could. Peyton's character is written just like everyone else who isn't black. He doesn't think about drugs, hoes, scams, he isn't from the hood, and he never says the N-word.
Huh. Keith just didn't know he was in need of representation.
Exactly. Anyway, some zombie-ass motherfucker wrecked LJ's 3-card Monty table, and the police arrested him for the disturbance.
Sounds about right.
LJ believes he was arrested because he left his crib without his Lucky Rick James CD. And just before the zombie-ass hoe Rashonda can sink her teeth into LJ, a freshly suspended, Jewish Jill Valentine bursts into the RPD, going completely postal on the place, and not a single cop in this place takes action to this mass shooting in progress.
Damn, where is she? Uvalde?
Oof, I'm just gonna ignore that.
Yeah, go on and ignore it, just like the media.
Yeah, and just like the media, Keith proves to us once again that he knows little to nothing about firearms. He describes every weapon in this book as an automatic. No details, no caliber, no make or model. He doesn't even know what a semi-auto is.
If I wanted to fire this on full semi-automatic...
I've never shot a gun before.
So, this little shooting of Jill's was carried out with her own 2 fully automatic automatics, since her Stars issue Beretta was confiscated after her suspension for rumor mongering. She claimed that Umbrella had covered up all the zombies she had killed out in the woods, but unlike the movie, her partner Leon Kennedy didn't die, and she didn't witness anyone turning into zombies. She just somehow knows that zombie bites infect, and I'm not entirely sure how she came about this information, because just moments before, she was outside her home killing hobos indiscriminately. If she saw a Bobo with any bit of blood on him, she'd blast him. Not even confirming if they had, in fact, been bitten. I can't even tell you how many hobos I've seen walking around with blood on them, and they were just fine.
Have to tell your people to shoot, to kill, to shoot for the head.
And like with Angela, you'll notice Keith has a strong hatred for women. Every female character in this book is an unlikable asshole. Jill has no respect or value for the lives of those around her. She hates LJ, despises Terry to the point of suggesting that they split up in the hopes that Terry gets killed. She kills this girl's father right in front of her without saying a word. She kills the priest for no reason in this book. She even contemplates putting a gun to Angela's head to secure her own ride out of town. Major Kane may kill people and get people killed every shift he works, but Jill takes the cake on the worst person in this story. And this is unconfirmed, but everyone suspects Jill of f***ing her way into stars, which wouldn't surprise me in this book.
Shut the fuck up for a moment.
After releasing LJ, she stuffs her cargo short pockets to the brim with automatics and magazines, and then speeds off in her Porsche to go shoot up the town. And at the same time, Carlos is off in the woods enjoying a nice vacation when a C-89 Darkwing descends upon him with orders from Major Kane. Nikolai Sokolov, not Genevieve, whatever his name is, Nikolai is the C-team leader, but he never acts like it. He's constantly taking orders from Carlos, who is always recklessly putting the lives of everyone around him in danger. Jumping out of this helicopter to save a single piece of ass right after the pilot told him the updraft in the city was too dangerous for them to hang around, and he jumps out not attached to anything. If this was the real Nikolai, the in-game Nikolai, he would have let Carlos die here. And this stunt was all for nothing. This lady Marla, the telemarketer, would rather die than spend another moment with this simp. He's not even thinking about the other soldiers out in the shit who needed his backup 5 minutes ago, and spoilers, they all die. And Carlos is like, some vacation.
God, my arms are freezing.
And at this point, 9 chapters into the book, we're finally introduced to our main character, Alice Abernathy, in a recycled, word-for-word cut-and-paste chapter taken directly from the ending of the previous book. Alice wakes up naked with only 2 things on her mind: how great Spence was at sex, and how hungry she is, and she could really go for some Che Bono right about now. I shit you not, I was hoping I'd never have to read about this restaurant ever again, but here we are. And another thing I dread reading about is all those Alice clones regaining their memories at the end of Extinction. 300 plus dumb blondes all fantasizing about gobbling Spence's Che Bono. I'm calling it now. Now Alice is pretty much the same boring character as the last time we met her, but here, we're given a few more pieces to the Alice puzzle. Like, she was born and raised in Columbus, Ohio. She was trained by a sensei to become ass-kicking Alice. Later, she worked security in DC for the Treasury, where she was stabbed by a mugger in the shoulder, leaving her with this gnarly scar. And later, she quit the gig over sexism. But I'm thinking it was because there was a lack of sexism. Why else would she agree to an arranged marriage job where Umbrella whores her out to have sex with senators and investors? If she really did leave because of the sexism, the plan really exploded in her face.
And so did Senator Salter, all over that face.
Okay, enough with the spoilers. We'll save that for the Retribution review. Anyway, she finds a lab coat, a shotgun, and never upgrades to any better threads. She spends the whole story wandering around naked, no shoes, no undies, just a lab coat and 2 pieces of paper. Honestly, I think Keith only ever looked at the cover art for this book. Every single stunt, every unbelievable feat of action by Alice is done full on commando. These zombies peeking up from the grass, they're getting a view of her ass. When she backflips off the scooter, Jill can see her cooter. Those high kicks on the grunts, they can see her. Now, Kane waking her up isn't in the book, and her journey from the hospital to the surplus store isn't in the film, and I wish it was because it's hilarious. She's just walking around town, naked, yelling at people struggling with zombies. She shouts things at them like, do a high kick, or break their necks. The strangers just give her confusing looks as they die from zombies because she distracted them at a crucial moment. Eventually though, she makes it to Che Bono, and the sad thing is, they've closed on account of the apocalypse. The family that owned the restaurant has all turned into zombies, so Alice unloads into all of them with her shotgun, unnecessarily wasting ammo, seeing how all the zombies ignore Alice because she's infected too. At the surplus store, she collapses and begins to mutate. All the cuts on her feet, the cut on her arm, they all heal super fast thanks to Wolverine powers. Even the shaved portions of her hair grow back super fast.
Are you telling me she's walking around with a full bush and armpit hair now?
Yeah, I gotta imagine her bush is now like Tim Allen's beard in the Santa Claus.
Nasty.
So, as she rapidly goes through puberty, again, she gains super hearing and vision, gaining the ability to sense lickers and other infected. And just as she's almost done with becoming a woman, a zombie riding a Harley Davidson comes crashing through the storefront and then just walks off, leaving her with a nice new bike, which she proceeds to ride around on, barefoot and bottomless.
It's really liberating actually to have such a kind of sexy outfit.
Looking for more people to kill, Jill Valentine ditches her Porsche at Ravensgate Bridge when she spots her only friend Peyton, who is immediately bitten by this zombie dad. And this scene is actually taken a little more seriously in this book. The daughter cries as her daddy collapses. She even tries to give him CPR all by herself. No one helps her out. And then Jill just shows up to put a bullet in his head, right in front of her. The girl runs off crying, knocking a radio out of an umbrella guard's hands. And as Jill picks it up, she overhears the orders to gun down the entire mob and seal the gates to the city. And this is a scene I really wanted to see played out in more detail. In the film, Jill, Terry, and Peyton, they just magically warp to a quiet part of town. How exactly did they escape the panic? Did they use anybody as human shields? Where did the crowd go? I was hoping Keith could make the scene a little more horrific and traumatic, but nope, what we get is much better. The following chapter starts with, if you had asked Jill Valentine how she managed to escape the chaos at Ravensgate Bridge, she couldn't have told you. Yeah, they just warp to the church, where they are greeted by Angus and his 357, a number associated with guns that Keith's heard about in movies, but has no idea it's a Magnum. And this guy is responsible for Marla's death, the suicidal chick from the rooftop. Yeah, Angus, a fellow telemarketer, survived by slamming the door shut on Marla's face, buying him time to scale down the side of the building, something Carlos witnessed from the helicopter.
No! Wait!
Angus went to the church to seek forgiveness and then immediately wants to kill these people. Terry calls his bluff and steps right up to the barrel of his gun. And this little act of bravery wasn't enough to gain Jill's respect. As Terry tries to introduce herself to everyone, Jill just blows smoke in her face. Classic Valentine. Now, the rest of this scene is a mess, and I think it's based on some deleted scenes that didn't really get fleshed out. 1 minute, the priest shows up spitting Bible verses, and the next he's gone. No explanation how Jill was having a conversation with the priest, only to lose sight of him mid-sentence, and then to be jump scared by the very person she was just talking to. Something is definitely missing in this chapter. Jill and the priest just warp to a place behind the altar. It's never even mentioned as a separate room, and this is when the priest introduces Jill to his wife, this zombie-ass hoe bound by electrical wire. The same electrical wire that was used to power this place. And knowing Jill, we know where this is going, because she's looking for any excuse to kill this priest. She doesn't even know if the wife's bite actually broke flesh before she puts a bullet in his brain. And Peyton, Angus, and Terry have to deal with the consequences of Jill's actions. Her automatics could be heard from down the street, which attracted those wall-crawling rhinoceroses known as lickers. Angus runs off and gets eviscerated, like actually shredded to pieces. And as Peyton and Terry approach, Jill fishes out that Magnum from out of his guts. And she doesn't back into a jump scare. Peyton and Terry just walk up behind her, alerting her about the 3 lickers when Terry's camera beeps. And from this point, it pretty much plays out just like the movie. Minus the Uzis and Alice's lack of wardrobe, she just comes flying through the stained glass window of the church for no other reason than she sensed some lickers in the area, and no explanation on what she ramped off of. And like the Mary Sue she is, she makes short work of the creatures. She spreads her legs and sends that bike flying right into a licker, and with a single shot from her Uzi, she blows the place up. And after all of that, Jill thinks to herself, this was all in the realm of possibility. All except for Alice kicking that bench into a licker.
I'm good, but I'm not that good.
Seriously, kicking the bench was when she started to question her abilities. Not the super fast reflexes, the dead-eye accuracy, or the pantsless Harley jump through a second-floor window while staying strapped with 3 weapons but no holsters. Oh, and they finally call them lickers in this book, and somehow Alice is just pulling random facts out her ass, claiming that these lickers hunt in packs, when we all know she's been asleep ever since her first encounter with one when she didn't even know its name. How about telling them they're blind, or they mutate after feeding? Anyway, Alice suggests taking the conversation outdoors since the whole place is burning, and they decide to cut through the graveyard because of all the zombies at the front door.
And what the fuck are we doing here? Am I the only one who's noticing that we're in a graveyard, people?
And this is when it starts raining, but not before they find themselves in a Mexican standoff. Alice can sense Peyton is infected, and I think it's only fair that someone kills one of Jill's friends for once. But this standoff is interrupted by some century-old ass corpses rising from the graves, for no reason at all, other than Alice's assumption, I guess the T-Virus must have leaked into the ground.
I don't know, man. At least he tried.
Yeah, would have been better just to ignore this whole scene, because Keith has already established in this universe that the T-Virus only creates zombies from airborne contamination. That's the whole reasoning behind Angela walking and not becoming the Walking Dead, and I don't care how much T-Virus was poured into the ground, these corpses are practically dust. There's nothing in their cells to revive, no functioning organs, and the virus isn't going to help them navigate their asses out of the grave. I hate it, and I hate it the most because I can't even blame Keith or Paul for this scene. This is fucking Capcom's fault. So, Mary Sue Alice, in this zombie fantasy fanfiction, just ninja kicks all the zombies to death with her bare feet. She stops the others from using their guns as to not attract more zombies, and back at Tent City, Major Kane fears that Ashford could report him to the higher-ups for losing Angela. So, to make matters even worse, Kane locks him up in an unsupervised tent with internet access. But luckily, Ashford doesn't even think of reporting him. Instead, he just hacks into the city's surveillance cameras to search for his daughter. If Kane was really worried about this report card, then maybe he shouldn't be telling Ashford that they're going to nuke his daughter at dawn. And with the city quarantine, Kane wants to use this time to joyride Nemesis, but doesn't have the patience to wait for Dr. Isaacs, the only one qualified to operate Nemesis. So, he doesn't even notify Isaacs of the situation, and just has some grunt named Johannesson helm the controls for Nemesis. Back in the city, Carlos and the C-Team get all but wiped out. The first medic trips and breaks her own neck. Sam Neill and Jack Carter die smooching each other. For reals, they share a passionate, infected kiss that turns bloody. Sam then shoots Jack in the head and then turns the gun on herself, leaving C-Team with just Carlos, dumb Nikolai, and infected Yuri. And together they spot an Umbrella Darkwing flying over the hospital. Wishfully thinking it's an evac, they drag Yuri's dead ass over there, where Nemesis springs to life, opening both of his beautiful blue eyes. Yeah, what the fuck? When it came to writing this, were they playing a game of telephone? Like, someone who actually had played the game described Nemesis to Paul, and then Paul gives Nemesis a blue eye, while Keith gives Nemesis 2 blue eyes? I'd like to see what would have come next. Nemesis with a blonde wig, cargo shorts? Anyway, every chapter from Nemesis's point of view is hilarious. They play out just like Bruce Campbell's The Man with the Screaming Brain.
One man, 2 different minds.
We're getting the snot beat out of us.
That's because you fight like a girl.
Correction. We fight like a girl.
Matthew Addison has locked-in syndrome. He's fully aware of everything going on, but has no control over Nemesis or his body. His personality is constantly in battle and arguing with the Nemesis AI portion of his brain. Also, when the Nemesis AI assumed control of Matt's body, it forced him to spill the beans on everything that went down in the hive, giving up the names of Matt's friends who were trying to take down Umbrella. And surprisingly, Keith never lets us know if he can get aroused or not. And he also doesn't know how tall Nemesis actually is. I swear, every chapter he gains a foot, which I guess is kind of film accurate, seeing how they constantly fucked up the skewing of the footage making Nemesis appear both stumpy and tall from shot to shot.
They didn't squeeze the same shots, so that I thought the Nemesis kind of came across as looking a little dumpy and small.
So that helicopter was really just dropping off toys for Nemesis. And again, Keith has no idea what he's talking about. He calls Nemesis's minigun a railgun, but describes it exactly like a belt-fed chain gun with rotating barrels, the kind you'd find attached to a helicopter, not a Metal Gear. Before we get to see the stars annihilated at Mostly Cult, LJ has to run home real quick to get that Lucky Rick James CD he's been talking about so much, and his 2 custom Uzis. On his way out, he boosts a red Camaro, pulling a real GTA motherfucker, before immediately wrecking his ride thanks to LaWanda's zombie-ass hoe tits, and he ditches his ride because he doesn't want to cruise around with the airbags deployed, in a vehicle that never had airbags to begin with. Now, the scene with the stars fighting Nemesis is completely different in the novel, and I believe this was how the scene was originally supposed to play out, but due to time and budget constraints, we were spared this hilariously stupid scene.
Time and money always being short on movies, we decided to retool it rather than us spending days shooting them flying through the air.
Instead of the sniper saving LJ from the rooftop of the movie theater, the sniper is now on top of Grady's Inn. He never sees LJ, as LJ just walks into Mostly Cult, which is mostly racist, and Nemesis blows up the top half of Grady's Inn, as Kane has updated his directives to locate and terminate stars. The shop owner, Lance, along with Henderson, are the only other 2 civilians not targeted, but they work with the rest of stars, loading up and securing the shutters to the shop. So Nemesis, like some fucking Looney Tune, blasts a perfectly shaped Nemesis-sized hole into the shutters with his minigun, and when everyone's attention is focused on the hole, Nemesis, with a single bound, leaps over the rooftop and comes crashing through the ceiling. And I can't believe I agree with Paul on this one, but less was more here.
Respect.
After that graveyard scene, all the phones on the block start ringing. It's Dr. Ashford. He's jacked the Verizon landlines, one of the few things Umbrella doesn't control, so they couldn't shut it down. He's looking to make a deal. He offers them an evac in exchange for his daughter's return. So Alice relays this information to the gang in the middle of the street. They don't wait to have this conversation in some abandoned cable car who knows how far away. She cuts to the point and informs the team that a nuke is coming to sanitize the city, and this is their only ride out. Now, Carlos and Nikolai, they get the same call, just after snapping Yuri's neck. C-Team is now down to just the 2 of them. On the way to the school, Alice senses Nemesis down a dark alley. She tries warning Jill and Peyton not to go down it, but they're like, fuck that, and walk right into Nemesis's bullets, immediately turning Peyton into Swiss cheese, because Nemesis is still set to terminate all stars. And even after witnessing this, Jill runs in headfirst towards the Nemesis, firing both her automatics, landing almost every shot into Nemesis, as she barely dodges his returning fire. Now, that wasn't much of a fight between Jill and Nemesis, but at least it was something. Better than anything Paul ever gave us, and thanks to Paul, fans will probably never ever see a proper Jill vs. Nemesis fight on the big screen.
Man, who the fuck does Paul think he is? Netflix?
So Alice takes over as Jill falls back. This car doesn't blow up, Alice gets shot in the bicep, which should have blown her arm clean off. She then drops down this chute, missing the mail bin, breaking 2 of her fingers, and Nemesis doesn't waste a rocket down the chute. She dresses her wounds with the torn canvas from the mail bin, but she still doesn't bother to cover up her lady bits. And just as all this is going down, Jill is outside screaming, "Jesus goddamn shit-sucking Christ," as she pretends to feel emotions when it came time to killing zombie Peyton, something we all know she was just waiting to do. Afterwards, Jill and Terry pick up LJ, who was just wandering the street, and this is where Jill's character really shines. She first threatens to kill LJ as soon as he gives her a reason. Then she thinks about punching Terry and how LJ has a pea brain, and then she plans on finding Angela before the others so she can just leave without them, which is exactly why she makes them split up, and she knows it's a dumb idea, but to her, these are dumb people. And at the school, Jill, having worked with the RCPD, doesn't have the slightest clue as to what these RCPD vans are parked outside, which are clearly marked canine. So, LJ takes the east wing, Terry takes the west wing, and Jill takes the basement. And in the west wing, Terry's death is just as stupid as it is in the movie. Somehow, zombie-ass kids who weren't in the room before just magically show up to eat her, and she refuses to shoot the kids because it's a gun-free zone. And surprisingly, when she dies thinking about winning a posthumous Emmy. And sex doesn't even cross her mind. Good job, Keith. And in the East Wing, LJ meeting infected Carlos plays out pretty much the same, except for the racism. And back in the West Wing, for some reason, Jill, who was supposed to be exploring the basement, stumbles upon Tori's corpse and camera. And it's not explained, but my theory is she was eager to see if Terry had gotten herself killed yet, and luckily, she had. Jill later lies to the team about where she found the camera, but thankfully, because of this detour, she was able to find Angela, but not before they were surrounded by dogs. Thankfully though, Nikolai shows up long enough to distract the pooches with all the blood coming out of his neck, allowing Jill and Angela to make an escape. Jill uses the gas to try and blow up the place, just like the movie, but instead of Alice saving Angela with the fire blanket, she smothers the child inside of her lab coat, you know, where she's got nothing on underneath.
Been there before. That's exactly why I'm not allowed within 50 yards of a school.
And to add insult to injury and trauma, Alice makes fun of Angela's withered little cripple legs right in front of the whole gang. Alice sniffs out the antivirus inside of Angela's Spider-Man lunchbox just as Carlos walks up, looking like a zombie-ass mother-father. And Carlos and Alice recognize each other, but they never elaborate. So Ashford sees the gang leaving the school and tries to make contact, but Alice wants to assert her dominance, so she keeps hanging up on the guy. And this is something the team really can't afford to be doing. With only 47 minutes until the evac leaves, she's in no position to be making demands, and seeing how Kane immediately pulled the plug on Ashford's computer, Alice's little stunt could have cost everyone their lives if she had done it just a minute later. So, with only 47 minutes until takeoff, Alice cures everyone with the antivirus and fills them all in on the events from the previous book, as she gives her "My name is Alice" confession to Terry's camcorder. At City Hall, where the helicopter's being prepped for Nemesis's return, Carlos, who's dressed exactly like all the other soldiers guarding the chopper, has no idea how to approach the chopper. He does, however, point out a sniper on top of the 40-story building. And Alice just somehow ends up on the roof. No explanation, no running upstairs or scaling the building. Oh, and for those of you who don't know, this is the director here getting killed on screen. And let's just take a moment here to enjoy that. So, Alice rappels down, naked, meat curtains just flapping in the wind as she descends to flash her next victim. And in the book, none of these guys are wearing tinted biker helmets, making these high kicks and throat chop knockouts just a little more plausible. And then Carlos, wanting a piece of the action, kills a guard with a throwing knife, making him one of the only characters besides Alice to actually do anything. Seriously, Alice does everything and saves everyone. This is supposed to be Jill and Carlos's story, and they do nothing but take a back seat. Alice even steals Carlos as a love interest from Jill.
My love interest.
And as the rest of the gang shows up, Kane pops out of nowhere with only 20 minutes left, and I don't even know why they bother with this countdown, seeing as Kane is the one to authorize the nuke in the end. Yeah, he's the one who calls in the missile strike, and then f***s up getting out of here. But right before all that, Kane wants to stick around and make Alice and Nemesis fight, for combat data. And I have no idea who's recording this data. It's not like he can use this information without costing him his own job. He's already running Nemesis without authorization. He kills Ashford right in front of Nemesis, who is, streaming all of this footage back to base.
He was a valuable asset to the corporation.
He better hope that Ashford didn't actually get around to filing that complaint against him.
I don't even care about these people.
So, to stop Kane from shooting any more of her friends, Alice gives in to fight Nemesis. And I don't know if I pointed this out in their last encounter, but every time Alice is around Nemesis, their hearts beat in sync. And it isn't until she stares right into Nemesis's clear blue eyes does she realize that the creature is actually Matt. And Matt, trapped inside his own head, is searching deep within his memories for anything unguarded by Nemesis's control.
If only he had fucked Spence, or ate at Che Bono.
Yeah, and then he'd remember everything. In the end, Nemesis loses the fight physically and mentally. Kane tosses Alice a Glock and tells her to finish the job, which she immediately turns on Kane, and I don't know who the bigger idiot is. Alice, the badass head of security super soldier who should be able to tell just by the weight that the gun is empty, or Kane, who's just wasting time they don't have to give Alice an empty gun just to be dramatic. And it's at this time Kane calls in for the nuke. Even though they haven't even taken off yet, he also orders Nemesis to kill Alice. Like, I guess, love prevails in the end and he disobeys his orders. And honestly, I don't even think Matt actually conquered Nemesis's AI. I bet it was because Johannesson, the operator, stepped away from his post after Kane declared Nemesis the loser, allowing Matt to fight back. And I'm glad that no one could hear his internal monologue as he cries like a little bitch.
Nemesis? More like Nemesisi. Hashtag not my nemesis.
So, Carlos yells, "God damn, he's switched teams. Go, you big motherfucker, go," pumping up Nemesis. But this victory is short-lived. Nemesis, being the big dumb idiot that he is, jumps way too high in the air and fires a rocket into a helicopter, and they both come crashing down together, killing Nemesis instantly. Yeah, that's how he dies in this book. And with that distraction, Carlos uses his throwing knife to break himself and the others free. The Code Veronica gun drop doesn't happen in this book, and all of Kane's fallen soldiers start coming back to life for no reason. Kane believes it's just the T-Virus still permeating the air, and we do see evidence of these non-infected bodies coming back to life, like Dr. Ashford, but what the fuck ever at this point. Kane tries to flee to the helicopter, but Montgomery, the pilot, has been knocked out by LJ, who then knocks out Kane. And just like Nemesis, we discover that Kane is really a little bitch. He cries and begs for his life, and I don't know why he can't just recall the nuke. It's not like he lost his comms. Anyway, they drop his ass and he breaks his ankle, the plexiglass barriers break, and the zombies pour in, just as Kane turns the empty Glock on himself, only to find it's still empty. And as the team takes off, the zombie-ass Dr. Ashford bites right into Kane. Montgomery, at gunpoint, flies them away, but is somehow able to report back to HQ on their location just before they crashed. And as the team ditches Alice's charred remains to climb up the Arcalay Mountains, Angela informs the team that Alice is still alive. At the crash site, Dr. Isaac hears the good news about Kane's death. He thought everything Kane did was retarded, and I couldn't agree more. He then transports Alice's body to a San Francisco facility, and I was never really sure if this was, in fact, the real Alice or a clone, but this book makes it out like this is still the real Alice here. She wakes up knowing Angela is outside waiting for her, and she can somehow sense that this dude's wife is pregnant. That's why she decides not to kill him, but is totally cool with just killing everyone else, like the security guard who's only doing his job watching monitors. He's not a threat to her. He probably doesn't even know he's working for an evil corporation. Seriously, she's acting no different than an escaped licker, and I love how she lies to herself. In this chapter she says she's never enjoyed killing anyone, but then, 2 paragraphs later, she thinks back to how much she enjoyed killing Spence, and how she wishes she could do it more often, even though she already forgave him and doesn't blame him for any of this. And none of these psycho-telepathic powers are even explained. Carlos, Jill, and Angela just roll up in an SUV. No LJ in sight, and they're not dressed as Umbrella guards. And knowing Keith, LJ is probably in a crack den or prison or something. And Dr. Isaacs doesn't even activate Project Alice. It still doesn't exist, and they just drive off into the sunset. And that's it. If you enjoyed this video, please like and share, and leave a comment. I'll be covering Resident Evil Extinction next. The fattest book in the series, probably because Keith knew it was going to be his last time working for them. And as far as rating and ranking these books, I have to wait until the series is finished. But I can safely say right now that this book was far worse than Resident Evil Genesis, and far worse than the movie it was covering, which is a rare accomplishment for a book. I think this Amazon reviewer said it best. When a movie can beat out a novel when it comes to nailing down emotions, reasons, and moralities of its characters, you're in trouble. Anyway, thanks again to all my patrons. Click here for more reviews, and click the links in the description below for more ways to support the channel. Thanks. Bye.